Welcome, everyone, to Jubilees chapter 6. And tonight's presentation is got a unusual beginning to it because Jubilees chapter 6 was the very first chapter of Jubilees that I charted in the manner in which this series of the book study has been done. It took me several years of following the calendar and reading Jubilees several times to finally have chapter 6 sink into my brain that the calendar was part of the covenant. And then all the light bulbs went off on, oh wow, now I understand why there's so much contention about the calendar and so much confusion about it, because it's part of the covenant. So I wrote a paper that I gave to my local fellowship to try to help bring some understanding to the discussion and the various calendars that were being discussed and used, and nobody was really on the same page a whole lot. And so that's where this document comes from. And I'm going to go through the introduction here before we get to the actual side-by-side comparison. Now, during the lockdowns of the crisis back in 2020, many people of faith prayed this verse below from 2 Chronicles, and they would share it. I mean, I'd be walking in Walmart and hear it, and people would talk about it. And I'm going to bring this verse back up again at the end of this study. But just keep it in mind, because it's 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and heal their land. Now, we have found that people truly walking on a path of light and trying to find the ancient path want to know if they are in error so they can repent and correct their course, their walk. This is what you look for. And when you're talking to people, some people will repent and correct courses, and some people just don't want to listen. This study is shared to help anyone do a course correction as needed. Each person is responsible, obviously, for their own walk and their own salvation, and walking that out with their Creator. And every person is held to account individually. Now, another verse to bring into your remembrance in association with this study is found in Revelation chapter 13. It is important to think carefully about who, where, and what is being spoken against. Verse 5, And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth and blasphemed against Elohim, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. Many prophets and books refer to there being a tabernacle in heaven. If you study Revelation chapter 12 slowly, you will see that the first half of that chapter is referring to the woman and the people in heaven, who are them that dwell in heaven at the end of Revelation 13:6 above. The book of Hebrews makes it clear that our Messiah, Mashiach, is the high priest of the tabernacle in heaven, referred to above as his tabernacle. Just as the earthly tabernacle of Moses was instructed to build that had feasts of Yahuwah celebrated on a calendar schedule, so there is the heavenly tabernacle that it was patterned after that also celebrates the feast of Yahuwah on a calendar schedule. This is clear once you read Jubilees and the book of 1st Enoch. The earthly and the heavenly are meant to be in synchronicity. The Dead Sea Scrolls includes text describing services in a heavenly tabernacle with priestly orders there overlapping with the priestly orders mentioned for the earth, with a second witness in the first book of Chronicles, chapter 24. Now, below is the last verse I'm going to go over before we get started. Below is an interesting verse from the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan. Okay, this is an Aramaic Targum, Genesis 3, verses 15 through 16. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, between the offspring of your children and the offspring of her children. And when the children of the woman keep the commandments of the law, of the Torah, they will take aim and strike you on your head. But when they forsake the commandments of the Torah, you will take aim and wound them on their heels. For them, however, there will be a remedy, but for you there will be no remedy, and they are to make peace in the end in the days of the king Yahusha, the Messiah. Now it just may be that from the beginning of the scriptures to the end of the scriptures, the people who overcome, the people attaining victories, are keeping the commandments and have the testimony of Mashiach. What calendar was he on? I did a video on that. Discerning the scope of all the commandments we are required to keep is a study in and of itself. We will be addressing in this study the instructions given concerning the covenant made with Noah and his sons and all mankind. Now, as an aside, just as a little bonus comment here for you, there's some books and there's some places in the scriptures where women are striking the head of the enemy, chopping it off. They're also crushing the head of the enemy. I found 3 places in scripture where women have done this. And I thought, wow, this is really not emphasized. And I remembered this Targum. And I was like, okay, so women have been doing this too. And I know, this is the Targum. This is not the traditional scriptures. And I know everybody says that it's the seed of the woman is Yahusha. And I understand that. But I found this Targum just an interesting little tidbit. Because when I first found it, and I went, this version actually fits with some of the stories I find in Scripture. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can leave a comment, or you can email me, or talk to me in community, and we can talk about it. Because the covenant includes the calendar. So if we want to have victory, and we're going to be the overcomers in the book of Revelation, then we're going to understand the covenants, aren't we? That's all about the Feast of Shavuot. And this chapter 6 of Jubilees falls into the Feast of Shavuot. Okay. Now, I don't have my notes. This was, the first thing that I early on did. And instead of having my notes in the right-hand column, you're going to see the Targum text in the right-hand side. And my notes in this version are going to be in the gray boxes with the bold black text. Okay, so the first section of Jubilees chapter 6 is talking about atonement. Remember, we ended chapter 5 with Noah releasing all the animals out of the ark. The ark had landed, there's dry ground, and everybody gets off the ark. So we're going to continue in this left-hand column here. And on the new month, the first day of the 3rd month, he went forth from the ark and built an altar on the mountain. And he made atonement for the earth, and took a kid and made atonement by its blood for all the guilt of the earth, for everything that had been on it had been destroyed, save those that were in the ark with Noah. And he placed the fat thereof on the altar, and he took an ox and a goat and a sheep and kids and salt and a turtle dove and the young dove, and placed a burnt sacrifice on the altar, and poured thereon an offering mingled with oil and sprinkled wine, and strewed frankincense over everything, and caused a goodly savor to arrive acceptable before Yahuwah. Now, as you can see in the middle column here in Genesis, it's a bunch of blank. It does start off, and it is noted that Noah built an altar and did a sacrifice, but it doesn't go into all the details that Jubilees does. Jubilees makes it clear that Noah's doing something that sounds a whole lot like Leviticus. The Targum is almost matching the Genesis story, but the Targum does have in it's verse 21 over here in chapter 8:21, that Yahuwah received and approved his sacrifice. So the Targum has a little bit more. And, Noah doing this type of sacrifice is long before the instructions were written down by Moses and appeared to be known. Long before Moses. Even Abel in the Garden of Eden people want to say, knew about sacrificing a lamb because his sacrifice was accepted and Cain's was not. The texts of First Enoch and Jubilees contain lots of information about the passing down of Torah instructions long before Moses. This is just, and here's an example of something you might think only came about with the Levites in the Exodus, but it was long before. Continuing in verse 4, and Yahuwah smelt the goodly Savior, and he made a covenant with him that there should not be any more flood to destroy the earth, and that all the days of the earth, seed time and harvest, should never cease. Cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night should not change their order, nor cease forever. Now, I've highlighted in yellow here in the middle and right-hand column that both Genesis and the Targum of Genesis add something that's not in Jubilees. They both, the Genesis says, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. And the Targum says, because the creations of the hearts of men are evil from his infancy. Okay, so Jubilees does not mention that there's evil in men's hearts even from the time that they're an infant. Now, all the versions seem to agree on that there was a covenant made, and it was not, and that Yahuwah said, I will not destroy all living things, which does not mean Yahuwah is restricted from flooding certain areas or even countries. Notice that in this covenant, Yahuwah agrees to keep the natural order of nature for food production, and the celestial bodies are to remain in order. But keep in mind that the book of Revelations and the prophets say that in the very end times, the natural order will be disturbed and go off balance. Okay. Next section. We're going to, we know that we're entering in a covenant. Noah's going to do that. Now we're going to look at the instructions given for the covenant. Because remember, I'm lining everything up here. So Jubilees, verse 5. And you increase and multiply upon the earth, and become many upon it, and be a blessing upon it. The fear of you and the dread of you I will inspire in everything that is on the earth and in the sea. And behold, I have given you all beasts and all winged things, and everything that moves on the earth, and the fish in the waters, and all the things for food, as the green herbs I have given you to eat. But flesh with the life thereof, with the blood you shall not eat. For the life of all flesh is in the blood, lest your blood of your lives be required. At the hand of every man, at the hand of every beast will I require the blood of man. Whoso sheds men's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for the image of Yahuwah made he man. And you increase you and multiply you on the earth. Now, something I want you to notice is I really didn't highlight a lot in this section. It's the three sources that we're reviewing here are very similar, but they're not exactly identical either. The Genesis and the Targum of Genesis are lining up nicely with Jubilees, and there's a few nuances to things that, not really that important, but they all are saying the same thing up to this point. But in trying to line up these texts now, things come not so lined up anymore. At this point, they're not going to line up. I've put a gap here for Jubilees, and I'm putting in verses 8 through 11 of Genesis, and I'll read Genesis for you. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and every beast that is with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there be any more flood to destroy the earth. So it's a repeating. These 4 verses are almost a repeating of what came before, and now the Genesis and the Targum are reading almost identically. I mean, identical, which in any time I've been comparing translations, a little warning flag goes off in my mind when things are identical. It's like, okay, somebody just copied something and we're missing what possibly, let's say, the Targum could have actually said. That's my personal opinion, and having looked at comparing lots of verses. So I call this covenant version number 1, the Genesis version. Now I'm going to give you the covenant in version number 2, in the Jubilees version, which is much expanded. See, that was the covenant, okay? According to Genesis. Now let's see what the covenant is according to Jubilees, starting in verse 10. And Noah and his sons swore that they would not eat any blood that there was in any flesh, and he made a covenant before Yah forever throughout all generations of the earth in this month. Okay, let's stop. Noah and his sons had to take an oath. They swore that they would not eat any blood in any flesh, okay? They're not going to eat blood, and they had to swear. That is missing from the book of Genesis. See, Genesis says Noah basically gets off the ark, makes an altar, does a little offering, and everything is just given to Noah. Noah doesn't got to do anything. It's all just a nice grant covenant, and Noah and his son said, oh, isn't this wonderful? We get to restart over now. Whereas Jubilee says, nope, Noah and his sons were required to enter a covenant. They had to participate, and they had to swear. Verse 11. And on this account he spoke to you, Moses, that you should make a covenant with the children of Yasharel in this month upon the mountain with an oath, and that you should sprinkle blood upon them because of all the words of the covenant which Yah made with them forever. So in this verse, Moses is being asked to restore the covenant with the children of Yasharel, the one that was made with Noah. They're going to have to take an oath and do this as well. Verse 12. And this testimony is written concerning you, that's Moses, that you should observe it continually, so that you should not eat on any day any blood of beasts or birds or cattle during all the days of the earth. And the man who eats the blood of beast or cattle or birds during all the days of the earth, he and his seed shall be rooted out of the land. So blood eating is off limits. And it's a written testimony, and it's unending. 13. And do you command the children of Yasharel to eat no blood, so that their names and their seed may be before Yahuwah, our sovereign ruler, continually. 14. And for this Torah there is no limit of days, it is forever. They shall observe it throughout their generations, so that they may continue supplicating on your behalf with blood before the altar every day, and at the time of the morning and evening shall they seek forgiveness on your behalf perpetually before Yah, that they may keep it and not be rooted out. Okay, in Exodus 24, verses 7 through 8, Moses sprinkles the blood on the congregation as mentioned in verse 11 of Jubilees above, as the congregation is read the covenant and agrees to do so. Just as Noah and his sons verbally made an oath, Moses made them do the same thing. Now, this lack of information in the other texts gives the impression to a reader, and teachers who teach on this, that the covenant with Noah was just a one-sided promise on the part of Yah to never flood the earth again, and realize that if Noah's sons had been faithful to the covenant they entered and taught their families, and it was kept, all mankind would be keeping this covenant and observing the Feast of Weeks. When this covenant was made, there was no set-apart people and no nation of Israel. Realize that. I mean, some things in this chapter, once I got through it being veiled to me, And I just read over stuff and I didn't comprehend it. It really started to, my eyes started to open. I was like, wow, okay. The sign of the covenant. I mean, all of that I just read you is not in Genesis. So you get a different covenant, okay? Sign of the covenant. Jubilees 15. And he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not again be a flood on the earth. He set his bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant, that there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. Now that's the end of the sign. The sign in Genesis is longer. And I'm going to read the Genesis version here, and then I'll make a few comments. Now here's the Genesis version. And Elohim said, "This is the token of the covenant which I made between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the water shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between Elohim and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth." And Elohim said unto Noah, "This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth." Now, in comparing the Masoretic text to the Targum in the book of Isaiah, I never found verse after verse like this where the Targum is identical to the Masoretic text. I mean, you just didn't see it. And again, in this section, for some reason, in comparing Genesis into this Targum, they're just like almost the same. For these two texts, this is the end of the verses on the covenant with Noah. Notice that it is all promises on the part of Yah and his warning to them not to eat blood, but no affirmation, no consent on their part, no agreement. They didn't have to do anything. Okay, I mean, there was a warning, but they didn't have to agree. Now, Jubilees continues, you see, because remember, I'm lining up Jubilees and Genesis in our book study. And Genesis continues. When Genesis picks back up again, we're going to be, as you can see, it's all blank, all the way rest of the down. We're going to be in the next chapter of Jubilees. So Genesis is done. That's it. And all the things that I'm about to read to you now are in Jubilees, but Genesis is silent on it. And you really have to ask yourself, what happened? I mean, these texts were, side by side and going right along. And, what do you think happened? Who benefits from what we're about to study now coming out of Genesis or never having been put into it? They want to say that Jubilees is the little Genesis, but to me, and in my studies and in what I'm going to be, what we'll be reviewing in this series, it's the other way around, if you ask me. Here's Jubilees. For this reason, it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year to renew the covenant every year. So there's instructions that you're supposed to remember and celebrate a Feast of Weeks every year. Now, realize that it starts here in Jubilees with Noah. It doesn't start in Genesis until Moses and the Exodus. But according to Jubilees, it started with Noah, and this covenant was renewed. And Moses was instructed to renew it. And I gave you the verses where to go find it in Exodus. So notice that this feast was originally for all mankind to celebrate and renew the covenant. Currently, only select groups of people are celebrating this feast for various reasons, whether or when focused on Mount Sinai or Pentecost, without knowing about the specific agreement made with Noah and the promises he and his son made and were to be carried forward. Verse 18, And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah. Let me read that one more time. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah. 26 jubilees and 5 weeks of years. And Noah and his sons observed it for 7 jubilees and 1 week of years till the day of Noah's death. So it started on the day of creation and it ended when Noah died. And from the day of Noah's death, his sons did away with it until the days of Abraham, and they ate blood. So this was celebrated from the day of creation. That's day 1. The same day that this feast is celebrated on. This is the only Moedim of Yahuwah that is celebrated. The Holy Convocation is on the day 1 of the week. And the second half of verse 18 means that all of Noah's sons, all, Shem included, ate blood and did away with this feast. Let that sink in. Verse 19. But Abraham observed it, and Yitzchak and Jacob and his children observed it up to your days. And in your days, this is the days of Moses, the children of Israel forgot it until you celebrated it anew on this mountain. So the feast was reset with Abraham. We're going to get there in the Book of Jubilees. Jubilees talks about this. And Abraham did it, and Isaac and Jacob, and once it was in Egypt, and then it was forgotten. Now, speaking to Moses, it's going to be reset, restarted, and retaught yet again. That's what is traditionally taught. This feast is an everlasting one and did not start at the Exodus from Egypt. Verse 20. And do you, Moses, command the children of Yasharel to observe this festival in all their generations for a commandment unto them. 1 day in the year, this month, they shall celebrate the festival. For it is the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruits. This feast is twofold and of a double nature. According to what is written and engraved concerning it, celebrate it. You've got the Feast of First Fruits of Barley at the beginning, and you've got the Feast of Wheat at the end. You've also got a double nature, and that you're having to count 7 sevens. That's a doubling. It's a double nature. For I have written, verse 22, for I have written in the book of the first Torah, in that which I have written for you, that you should celebrate it in its season, 1 day in the year, and I explained to you its sacrifices that the children of Yasharel should remember and should celebrate it throughout their generations in this month, 1 day in every year. So in this section, we've learned that the feast was celebrated since the beginning of creation, and the keeping of this covenant has been on and off again multiple times throughout the time up to Sinai. In reading books such as First Enoch, Jubilees, and the Book of Adam and Eve, along with the timing found in the traditional canon, one can understand that Shavuot is a feast in which the covenant of life is being renewed and remembered. You are celebrating the feast of day 1 of creation. You're connecting to day 1 in Genesis when you do this feast. Okay, now we're going to go into the next section starting in verse 23, that is a memorial remembrance days for the journey of the ark. And on the new month, the first day of the first month, and on the first day of the 4th month, and on the new month, that's the first day of the 7th month, and the new month, the first day of the 10th month, are the days of remembrance and the days of the seasons in the 4 divisions of the year. These are written and ordained as the testimony forever. And Noah ordained them for himself as feasts for the generations forever, so that they have become thereby a memorial unto him. And on the new month of the first month, he was bidden to make for himself an ark. And on the day the earth became dry, and he opened the ark and saw the earth. And on the first day of the fourth month, the mouths of the depths of the abysses beneath were closed. And on the first day of the seventh month, all the mouths of the abysses of the earth were opened, and the waters began to descend into them. And on the new month of the 10th month, the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and Noah was glad. Now, we studied all these days in the last video in chapter 5, verse 28. And on this account, he ordained them for himself as feasts for a memorial forever, and thus they were ordained. Now, note, these are not the days mentioned in the first book of Enoch, chapter 75, as the intercalary days. These feast days are on the first day of the month, not the 31st days of months 3, 6, 9, and 12. As you saw in Jubilees chapter 5, in the Jubilees chapter 5 study, both Jubilees and Genesis are making it clear that it's the first days of these months. Now, remembrance days on the covenant calendar, that's the ancient biblical calendar. This is the calendar of sevens, the septenary calendar given to Noah for the Feast of Weeks, which is a 7x7 calendar. And if you don't know what I'm talking about by this being a septenary calendar, please go watch the videos that I did on the covenant calendar series, especially part 2 will explain this, what I mean by septenary. Okay, verse 29. And they placed them on the heavenly tablets. Each had 13 weeks, from one to another, past their memorial, from the first to the second, and from the second to the third, and from the third to the fourth. And all the days of the commandment will be 52 weeks of days, and these will make the entire year complete. Thus it is engraved and ordained on the heavenly tablets. And there is no neglecting this commandment for a single year or from year to year. Means you're not supposed to go off this. Verse 32, and command you the children of Yasharel that they observe the years according to this reckoning 364 days. I mean, Jubilees has just described to you the structure of the calendar that we keep. It's the covenant calendar. See, this is why I call it the covenant calendar. And these will constitute a complete year. This agrees with 1 Enoch. And they will not disturb its time from its days and its feasts, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. Meaning, your feast days and your normal 7-day Sabbath days are not going to overlap. Nothing will be disturbed. Verse 33, but if they do neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons. The years will be dislodged from this order, and they will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged, and they will neglect their ordinances. Verse 34, and all the children of Yasharel will forget and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new months and seasons and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to the order of the years. Verse 35, for I know, and from henceforth will I declare unto you, and it is not of my own devising, for the book is written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feasts of the covenant and walk according to the feasts of the Gentiles, after their error and after their ignorance. Verse 36, for there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason, making observations of the moon, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day, the day of testimony, and an unclean day, a feast day, and they will confound all the days, the Kodesh with the unclean, and the unclean with the Kodesh, for they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. For this reason, what reason? Go back up to verse 36, making observations of the moon. I command and testify to you, Moses, that you may testify to them. For after your death, your children will disturb them. After whose death? Moses' death. Your children will disturb them so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason, they will go wrong as to the new months and the seasons and the Sabbaths and the festivals, and they will eat all kinds of flesh and all kinds of blood. This blood eating, remember, that was part of the covenant, the everlasting eternal covenant, that Noah and his sons had to take an oath and say, we will not do this. That is going to happen. So in verse 35, the heavenly tablets are referred to and named the division of days. Now, this is the first verse of the Book of Jubilees that I want to remind you of. It says, this is the history of the division of the days, of the law and the testimony, of the events of the years and their year weeks, and of their jubilees throughout all the years of the world, as Yahuwah spake to Moses on Mount Sinai when he went up to receive the tables of the law, the Torah, and the commandment, according to the voice of Elohim. He said unto him, go up to the top of the mount. Now notice the instructions for this covenant included the heavenly calendar kept in the tabernacle in heaven of Yah, the one that's being blasphemed in Revelation 13:6. And I want to call to your remembrance Isaiah 8:20, which says, to the Torah and the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them. Now, another note here I have. The calendar being referenced here is a 52-week, 364 days in a year calendar that's septenary, that is referred to in multiple places in Jubilees and matches the calendar given to the prophet Enoch in 1st Enoch, the Zadok priestly calendar in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the priestly order given in Chronicles, and all kinds of scripture that fits onto this calendar. Realize that all the 52 weekly episodes that we produce on the channel come from this information and are on this calendar. So I'm going to stop here and I'll discuss more on Monday night in community. But this is the comparison for Jubilees chapter 6. And I hope that your eyes have been opened, if they weren't already, to things that are in this covenant with Noah that's in the Book of Jubilees. And it explains so much, does it not, about why calendars are debated and there is confusion on this subject, because it's such an important subject. This is like I said, this is the first chapter in Jubilees that I charted like this and said, oh wow, now I see it. Now look at how it compares to Genesis. So I hope you've enjoyed Jubilees chapter 6, and I look forward to our discussion on Monday night. Please like the video. Leave me a comment because it really helps the YouTube algorithm. Share it with more people. And if you want to join us in our discussion, then and are not a part of our community, then please go to the description, and there are links there that you can follow. Shalom.